Hello, my name is Ian Bajwa, and I'm part of Group 3, and I will be presenting on behalf of my group members. So, on February 7, 2000, Yahoo.com was targeted by a distributed denial of service attack, known as DDoS attack. Over the next week, Amazon, CNN, Dell, and eBay were all similarly attacked. The attacks managed to bring down these sites, and although they were only down temporarily, it caused millions of dollars of damage, as well as denying internet users vital resources. It didn't take long for law enforcement to find their suspect, a 15-year-old boy, Michael Callis, living in Montreal, Quebec, otherwise known as Mafiaboy. So we are Group 3, and the video today will be discussing the 2000 Mafiaboy attack. So let's move on to the next slide, and where we will talk about Michael Callis, the Mafia Boy. Who is he? So Michael Callis was born in 1984 in Montreal, Quebec. Michael spent the early ages of his life feeling isolated from his friends and family. His parents had divorced when he was only 5, and he found it difficult to maintain a friendship and a sense of stability when he would travel between his parents' houses each week. It was for this reason that Michael's father brought him his own computer to keep him entertained. This sparked the beginning of Michael's fascination with computers. So let's move on to the next slide and actually talk about the 2000 Mafia Boy DOS attacks. So on February 7, 2000, when Michael was only 15 years old, he carried out a DDoS attack on Yahoo. In the early 2000s, Yahoo was the world's largest search engine and was worth billions of dollars. The DDoS attack was successful, and he managed to bring down Yahoo for almost a full hour, which is a lot. Then Buy.com was also targeted and attacked in a similar manner. Over the next 3 days, CNN, Dell, and eBay were all attacked by Michael via DDoS attacks and managed to temporarily bring them down the sites to varying degrees of success. This was what Michael called Project Revolta, or simply Project Rebellion. According to Michael, the goal of Project Revolta was to establish the dominance and gain notoriety for his cyber group. So let's move on to the next slide and see what happened to Michael Callis. Callis drew the attention of law enforcement quickly due to him taking credit for Project Revolta and IRC, Internet Relay Chats. In these IRC chats, Michael used the pseudonym Mafia Boy. He became the prime suspect to both the RCMP and the US FBI, which in the same IRC, he took credit for the DDoS attacks on Dell, an attack that had not yet been publicly disclosed. The RCMP gathered evidence and monitored Michael and then arrested him only days after the attacks. After being arrested, Michael initially denied responsibility. He claimed that the attacks were initiated unintentionally and without malicious intent. His story was that he had been playing around with the security tool, that is a program that he had downloaded off Hotline Communications, an early internet file sharing platform. While Callis was messing around with the tool, he inputted some known addresses for sites such as Amazon, Dell, and eBay, and etc., and all these other websites he attacked, and that he initiated the attack without his knowledge. He then left school unknowingly, letting the DDoS attack to be carried out. When he returned home, he found his computer had crashed and heard of the attacks on the news. He realized what had happened. However, it would seem that Michael's story was nonsense. In the IRC chats, he not only took credit for the attacks, but asked other users what other website he should target next. He would later plead guilty to over 50 charges brought against him and would serve 1 year probation, 8 months to open custody, and pay an assortment of small fines and have only restricted internet access. So let's move on to the next slide and see how damaging and the important effects of the 2000 Mafia Boy attacks. So the financial damage caused by the 2000 Mafia Boy attacks is somewhat consented, but it is believed that the attack caused around 1.2 billion US dollars in damages, which is equivalent to about 1.7 billion dollars at the time, Canadian, 1.7 billion Canadian. So the Mafia Boy attacks really did was bring public attention to how truly vulnerable the digital world was at that time. The fact that a 15-year-old teenager from high school could bring down some of the world's largest websites, causing millions of dollars of financial damage, with simply his computer, which is really shocking and worrying to many. It's also shocking due to how relatively unskilled Michael was. While he had a good understanding of computers and their inner workings and was relatively smart, he was no saint. In fact, that was particularly worrying. It demonstrated that anyone with enough will and the intermediate grasp of computers could launch devastatingly and widespread attacks via the internet. So what is he doing now after he served his sentence, after this whole attack thing? So Mafiaboy has now created his own company called Optimal Secure with his prior experience and helps other businesses across Canada and the world find weak spots in their company's networks and to help show each individual business how vulnerable they are if they find a network breach or any like security loss. So now let's move on to the conclusion. And in this slide, you'll see all our resources used. And while the 2000 Mafia Boy attacks aren't the most damaging or even high profile cyber attacks in history, they were conducted early enough in the internet's history and were financially damaging enough to bring widespread public attention to cybersecurity and its weaknesses. So we should pay attention to cybersecurity in the future. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.